Hi, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. It's basketball time, and we're going to really go deep into this story. Imagine yourself being a young coach, and you get handed several teams along your journey in as a coach. And for some reason, the teams just aren't living up to their potential. The question is here, how do you get the morale, the winning instinct, the drive to become better, to really bring your talent to the surface? Today on the show, we have a young man who actually has done this not once, not twice, but multiple times in his career. I'd like to welcome to the show. I'm gonna call it the way it is. If he keeps following his journey, he's gonna be in the Basketball Hall of Fame. The one, the only, Mr. Nate Vogel. Welcome to the show, Nate. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Appreciate you having me.
I followed your career. I've read your bio. It is truly one of what we may call a Cinderella storybook. Before we get started, tell the viewers a little bit about you before we dive into your uh, road to different basketball organizations in the colleges.
Yeah, so played my college basketball at Black Hills State here in South Dakota, and then kind of been a long journey, to be honest with you. I went to grad school at SIU Carbondale along with my wife, and left that and got out of coaching actually for a while. We owned personal training studios for about 15 years in St. Louis, and then finally decided to get back into coaching and got in at the high school level there in St. Louis on the boys side, and then took a job finally. After 2 years, decided I knew I wanted to do this for my career, and so decided to dive into the college game at Maryville University in St. Louis, and started on the men's side for a year, then jumped over to the women's side, and then went from the Black Hills State as an assistant, and finally got my first head coaching job after all that at Miles Community College, Division One JUCO in Montana, and then from there to Texas A&M International, and just about to start my first season here at Augustana University in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Were you a really good basketball player in high school?
I was okay. I was fortunate to play with some really good players. Fortunate to get a scholarship to play college basketball. I was a role player. I definitely wasn't the big time scorer or the guy in the newspapers or on TV. I was the guy passing the ball to the guys that were on TV and in the newspapers. So, but like I said, fortunate to play with some really good players, and I was on some really good teams. So it's been it's a lot. It's said a lot, but basketball has taken me a lot of places I probably wouldn't have been without basketball. So I've been very fortunate.
When did that mindset for basketball really start to enter your field? Because you mentioned you own several personal training studios. I myself also own personal training studios, but clearly I wasn't thinking about going to coach basketball. So like when did the red light actually click? Did you sit down with your wife Tracy, who we'll talk about later, and say, look, I want to do something different? And then if so, what was that moment?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. My coaches in college, and I had a couple. They weren't in college coaching anymore by the time I had that opportunity. So I didn't really even know or how to get into the college game. To be quite honest, even when I was in grad school, I was a graduate student in the strength and conditioning program, not the basketball program.
Mhm.
But even then, I was thinking, man, I wish I would have went on the basketball route because it's I've always been interested in sports and specifically in basketball, and so it's always been in my mind. And kind of the quick story about how I got into that high school role is I was in an organization with other business owners, and one of the other business owners in that group, his alma mater needed a head coach, was looking for a head coach, and he asked if I'd be interested. And I thought, yes, that's a good way to get in. And I went through the interview process and got that job. And that's kind of what led me into getting into basketball again. While I was a high school coach, um, I went to the Maryville University practices just to kind of watch and learn. And again, long story short, I called, texted, emailed hundreds of coaches, and I had one reply, and that was that coach that I went to watch his practices. And he said, "Yeah, I'll take you on my staff, but I don't have any paid positions. You got to volunteer for free." And so that's what I did. I volunteered for free for 2 years. And thank goodness my wife was able to help us out with the bills and all that kind of stuff. But so yeah, volunteered for free for 2 years, and then finally got my first paid job, and we were off and running.
Most people, my hats off to you for doing that because most people would not have taken that opportunity to go and do that for free and you did it for 2 years to actually
Yeah.
see a gate open up. And really, he was there any promissory note saying that after 2 years you was guaranteed a job?
No, nothing, nothing. And actually, when I got that paid job, it wasn't at Maryville. It was at Black Hills State, which is my alma mater. But it's interesting because I have a lot of players that are interested in coaching when they're done playing.
Right.
And I tell them that story. I tell them, I volunteered for free because they want to know, they think you get the ESPN money, like they announce the NBA coaches' new salaries, and that they think that's what I'm paid and that kind of stuff. And I tell them I was paid 0 for 2 years,
Right.
and they think I'm lying to them. They think they're like, "Coach, there's no way, just tell us the truth." And I'm
Right.
like, "That's the truth. I work for free." And so, I don't think some of the people getting in, especially the younger people, understand, what it looks like when you first get in and what you have to do when you first get in. There's a million different ways that happens, and everyone's path's a little different, but yeah, mine was working for free to hopefully get a paid job.
Were there ever moments where you was like, I don't want to do it no more because bills still have to be paid? I'm pretty sure it was stressful to watch your wife take the blunt force of keeping the the dream alive. I mean, how was that working out?
Yeah, no, I never had that feeling. We weren't putting the money away in the bank. We were, my wife was making just enough for us to pay the bills. And again, thank goodness she was there and willing to do that. I think every good coach has a great spouse on the other side of that, that allows you to take the journey. But no, I always felt we were going to find a way. I've kind of always been a really hard worker, and I just, in my mind, I thought if I put my head down and grind a little bit, eventually this will happen. And I didn't know when. Was that 10 years? Is that 20 years? I didn't have any idea. But I think, as with most people that do well, it's a matter of working harder than everybody else. And so that was my mindset going in.
What were some of the things you mentioned and let's call it what it was. I don't You did it for free, but you was an intern. What were some of the
Yeah.
things that you learned as an intern for 2 years that you didn't know that really amplified you to the next to that level of really walking in, feeling secure about what you learned?
Well, the first thing I learned was how much I didn't know. That was the first thing.
Really? Like what? Like
I
what?
I Well, like, I played college basketball, and then I was a head high school coach. And so you walk into that college job thinking, I know basketball, I know how to do this. And you don't. You don't know how to recruit. You don't know how to, the budget side of things. You don't know, like, all the details that, I knew basketball, I knew X's and O's, at least a little bit. But you don't understand coming in. Like, I have a lot of people ask me, like, so what the heck do you do all day as a coach? You go to practice, and then what else is there? That's your day.
Yeah.
And so you find out in a quick hurry what that rest of the day is, because the basketball on the court stuff is a super minimal part of your day. And so is all that other stuff off the court.
So you basically, what is a day like for you? Now take the viewers down that view because you're right. We see the coaches on the field, on the court, but you had to learn the business aspect of it. Take us down that what a day is like going to work with you.
Yeah, so and I get in anywhere, I wake up and kind of try to spend a little bit of the morning with my kiddos and my wife and so on, but usually get in somewhere around 8 or 9. And then we're checking emails and checking texts, and that's the thing too. Like, I had been calling or texting recruits the night before till whatever time that is. It kind of depends on their schedule, but checking emails, and then usually we'll have, and I'm not a big meetings guy, so it's more yelling across the hall sometimes. Sometimes it's sitting down in a meeting with my assistants, but it's more, hey, who do I need to connect with today, recruiting wise? Is there anything administration wise that I need to take care of? Putting out some little fires, like yesterday we have an international player who still doesn't have her visa, so we're talking with international engagement and trying to get her visa to her. I just had one of my um, other players that flew in, and we're trying to get housing situated and meal plans situated, and so we're working on all that. And in the middle of that, we're setting up our schedule. We're setting up the 25-26 schedule. We're recruiting 2026 and 27 student athletes.
Right.
And then you're watching film. You're trying to get prepared for first games coming up in November. And so it's a lot. A lot of it's really spent in front of the computer, either watching kids we want to be part of our team, watching our current team, or watching the teams we're going to play. And so no day is exactly like the last. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to answer your question in terms of what's a day look like, because
I tell you
every day
like
is
this,
different, but
Nate.
it's fun.
I tell you like this. Just listening to your day, I'm going. I couldn't handle it.
No, but that's the great thing about like, I go into work in shorts and a t-shirt every day. I get to watch basketball. I get to talk basketball. I mean, I live a pretty great life in my opinion.
What has your first job, your first major job? What was that like for you? What was the record? What was the environment like when you had to come in as your first main uh job title on the college ranking? Were you accepted? What were some of the challenges that you had to deal with?
And are you like, when I got my first head coaching job? Is that what?
Yeah,
Is that yeah,
yeah.
so, I got that, and again, super unique situation. I got my first head coaching job after only 3 years as a college assistant, which that doesn't happen very often either, so super fortunate with that situation. But, that was at Miles in Montana, Division I JUCO. So took over that program with literally 0 players on the roster. Every single player had either transferred out or quit previous to myself getting there. And so they're good and bad to that. The bad part obviously is you got to build an entire roster in about a month to get ready before school starts. The great part about that was I got to fill an entire roster with the players that I wanted. And so, gosh, they handed me the keys and said, "Get going." There wasn't a lot of direction as far as exactly what to do. But we filled a roster in about 4 weeks. Took a lot of international players that first year, and we ended up 25-8 that first year, and then we were 33-1 that second year, and then headed out to take the Texas A&M international job.
How did you Two-part question. Why did the previous players walk off or leave, then come back? And then more importantly, if they walked off, how in the hell do you recruit players to come to a team that at first didn't have players? How do you get their morale? What was the selling pitch that you went in as a recruiter and say, okay, well, we don't have any players now, but I want you to be the start of a new legacy here at the school? How did you wind up doing that to even get the players there and to build such an outstanding record?
Yeah, well, gosh, first of all, there's a lot of people in this world, not just our country, but in this world that want to play basketball. And so again, at that time, there wasn't a lot of U.S. kids still available. So I went overseas and got 6 players overseas that first year. And they're just super thankful to be able to play college basketball, because you can't do that in Europe. You don't. That's not a thing. You play college basketball in America, and so the opportunity to get their education paid for, to play college basketball, and I have a few of those players now playing professionally. So, they wanted an opportunity to continue their career, And so I was fortunate to come across some really really good players that it wasn't a big deal to them to become, and maybe it was a situation you didn't, I don't know, to be honest. I think they were excited about starting something new and not having to have the hesitation coming in about, well, there's some veteran players that we're going to have to mesh with. They didn't have that. Everybody was going to be new, and so maybe that was actually a positive.
How did you wind up getting those players? You mentioned part of the learning experience for your intern was understanding the art and craft of recruiting, but you're talking about international players. How much research did you get into? How much research did you put into before with getting these players that's international? And then, more importantly, what were you looking for from international players?
Well, obviously a JUCO budget. I wasn't heading over to Spain and all the other places we got players from. So there's people that I was connected with overseas, and they sent me film. Hey, this is a player for you to look at, and I would spend hours and hours and hours of my day, because at that point, um, kind of a side story. Sorry, my wife was pregnant, about to have our second baby, and so she was still in South Dakota. I moved to Montana by myself. She was like 8 or maybe even 9 months pregnant at the time.
Oh,
And so I didn't, the positive side of that, I guess, was I didn't have anything other to do than watch film and basketball, because, I wasn't with my kids or my wife at that point.
mm.
And so I would spend all darn day watching film of players, and um, kind of figured out what the heck we wanted. We always want very versatile players. We press for 40 minutes and we launch a lot of threes. And so I wanted really versatile players that could do a lot of things offensively, guard a lot of spots defensively. And we were able to find that.
How did you build the cohesiveness? You got different players from all over the world playing, and a lot of the players, like you said, your first year, this is totally new. So you're coming in trying to build morale. How did you wind up picking the captain? How did you wind up putting a system together, a belief system that they understood what you was trying to build? Because let's get real, your job is still on the line too.
Yeah. Well, we start that during the recruiting process, meaning here's what our culture we want it to look like. And so we tell everybody we recruit, and we remind them once they get here almost daily, that your number one job is to take care of your teammates. You should expect to be taken care of by your teammates and your coaches. And if that sounds like that's a culture you want to be a part of, join us. If that's not something you're going to buy into, if you're only about basketball and your stats, and you're not going to be concerned with taking care of your teammates, then we're not going to be a good fit for you. And so they know that coming in. Culture is our absolute number one non-negotiable. You're going to have to be part of a team, and be part of a caring culture. And so, again, they know that coming in, and then we stress it daily. We don't hope that it happens. We actively work on it. So every single day, we will do something to help our culture in a positive way. And then in terms of captains, and every coach does this a little different. I don't select the captains. I think for me, I think leadership just it happens. It's not something you select.
Mhm.
And so leadership on our team, there's some people that lead, and obviously leaders need to be followed, and that just naturally happens. Someone's going to start a drill, someone's going to start the stretching, someone's going to get on their teammate about something that needs to be better. That's not something I declare, it's something that just naturally happens. And so I've never called a captain, at the first day of the or first game of the season.
Mhm.
I tell them, if you think you're the captain of our team or you're the leaders of our team, go up to center court when the refs ask you to come, and it just happens. Whoever the leaders are, go up there.
Hmm. How difficult? What was the opportunities that opened up another door for you to go to the next journey of your life with coaching? You wind up going to
Yeah,
Texas, I believe, Texas A&M
yeah,
International, right? What was that environment like, and how difficult would
correct. Yeah,
it be from where you just built this foundation to go to a different, even a different region? You're now going to Texas.
Yeah, we were, in Montana, we were just a few hours from Canada. Texas, we were literally on the border with Mexico, so it couldn't have been any different in terms of cultures and just other stuff. But that second year before we left, we went 33-1. Is the answer to your question? Is how the doors opened? We had a good season. We won a lot,
Mhm.
and so had the opportunity to go to Texas, and um, man, it came into another situation that was in a tough spot. They had won 0 games the year before I got there. They had won 5 games total in the 3 years combined before I got there. And so again, another challenging situation, and had to turn the culture around and the mentality around. We knew it was going to be a significant challenge. All my mentors in coaching told me, "Do not take that job. It's a career killer. You're it's a hard place to win in a really good conference." And man, I just wanted to be a college coach at the Division II level at that point, because I just wanted to go up a level. I felt like there wasn't a whole lot more we could do in Montana, and so that was the next challenge. And I felt confident that we'd be able to get the culture right and find the players, and we were fortunate to do that.
What do you think were the pitfalls with walking into that job? You had individuals that came to you and said, "Don't go there. You know, it's just not a good place to be." But you decided that you was
Yeah.
going to make a difference. When you walked in there, I know you had to do your recon. What were some of the pitfalls that you saw in that culture before you went into Texas to take that position that you knew was stigmatic, that was a cycle? Because usually losing is a cycle of repetitive doing the same thing that wasn't working. What were some of the things that wasn't working that you noticed that you said, I can take the job because I can get rid of these things that are causing this like of happening in with this basketball team?
Yeah, and I didn't get a super solid view of the culture. I don't think you know the culture unless you're in it, but you can ask some questions and hopefully get a, you know, 5,000-foot view of where they're at. But the biggest thing was, the chemistry of the team wasn't great.
Mhm.
The expectations of the team weren't great. They didn't expect to win. I think the level of work ethic wasn't what we were going to have if I took the job. And so those are some of the things in the team. But then in that conference, probably bottom of the conference in terms of facilities. We were, like I mentioned before, on the border, so a challenge to get parents to send their daughters to the border. And so we knew there was going to be some challenges, even if we fixed the culture. Um, but again, we had some great young women buy into what we were trying to accomplish, and we did well.
Who were some of the inspirational players that you remember on that team that really helped you to build the environment that you were so seeking to have happen at the school?
Yeah, well, gosh, and it's hard to pick out individual players, but just a few that come to mind. I actually had a couple players follow me from Montana to Texas, which that was vital to kind of starting what we wanted that culture to look like, because I had a couple players that already knew what the culture is supposed to look like, and so they were kind of the leaders in terms of bringing that culture from Montana to Texas. And so Patricia Jaworska was one of them. She was a kid that I got from Poland. um, and gosh, she was an absolute big time player for us. She actually ended up playing professionally back home in Poland. So she kind of got things kick started for us. And then again, we've had a lot of players. Eva Langton was one that we brought in. She was from New Zealand. She ended up playing professionally as well, and great basketball player, but even better person. Again, culture thing. And I'll always take a kid that's a culture kid that maybe not be as good talent level wise. I'll take a culture kid first. They got to be talented, but if they're not the most talented, that's okay. We'll figure things out. And then I guess one other name that kind of pops up right away is Ray Brown. She was a two-time All-American for us, kid from New York. Um, and she'll be the next one. She'll be playing professionally as well.
You got a lot of things. This when you was there, you wind up being the coach of the year, so to speak. Did I get that right?
In Montana, yeah, in Montana we were.
What was that like for you?
Well, as I think every coach knows, players win. Coaches, if anything, we can maybe take credit for recruiting the right players, but at the end of the day, the players got to go get the points and the rebounds and the steals and all that. So I was just super thankful. I will that team that second year in Montana. It's going to be hard to match ever again in my entire career in terms of what it felt like. Um, in terms of all the players being on the same page, all the players caring for each other, all the players doing all the extra stuff we ask them to do, the service stuff, and then to finally cap that thing off with a national tournament appearance and winning our conference and winning the district and winning the region. I was just so thankful that our players got to experience that. And my assistant coach got to experience that and we talked about it kind of as we're going through, like, you may never have this ever again. And even knowing that, it's hard not to take it for granted, because even that next year, you're like, man, I don't know if I'll ever have that again. And I might not. I haven't had anything. We've had some good teams since then, but nothing like that. And so just super excited for our players to be able to experience that.
You wind up having a great career at Texas A&M International, but the door is open again for you to go back home. What did you want to go back home, and if so, why?
I definitely wanted to come back home, and my wife wanted to come back home. We're both from South Dakota. I'm specifically from Sioux Falls. Um, my almost entire extended family is here. My parents are still here, aunts, uncles, cousins, almost everybody's still here.
Right.
So that was the number one reason to come back. I hadn't been back permanently since I graduated high school. So it's been 26 years. So, my parents would usually come visit us wherever the heck we were at for a week or so in the winter, and we would come up here for a week in the summer. So, for about 26 years, I only saw them for a couple of weeks every year. And so that was big to get my kids back closer to grandpa and grandma and cousins and so on. So that was the number one reason. The other reason is Augustana has a gigantic history of super successful athletics and specifically women's basketball. So it was kind of a flip situation in terms of uh, leaving a place that facilities weren't great to a place where we're probably the top facilities in the conference. We're in a spot where you're expected to win. This past year, I think 7 teams in our athletic department won a conference championship. I think, if I'm not mistaken, 18 of our 22 sports have played for a championship in the last 3 years. Departments won 5 national championships. I mean, it's a big time program at a big time school, and it just so happens to be in my hometown.
What do you what Before we wrap up, what are some of your aspirations? You I know it's cool being a college coach, but we talked about your last name and it relates to the MBA. Are there
Yep.
any aspirations of really going there and leaving the collegiate rankings?
I think every coach has probably asked this in some respect, and I'll never say never to anything. I would have never assumed I was going to get a head coaching job in Montana. I would have never assumed I was going to get one in Texas, and I would have never assumed I'd get a job in my hometown watching the team I grew up cheering for as a little kid. So, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I do know, having been gone, having not been around my family, my extended family for a really long time, being here is a blessing. And so I have no desire to look anywhere else right now. I love being home. I love being around my family. Um, I think going up a level would be, not, I think you're really looking for more money or helping out your ego a little bit. And certainly money is nice, but if I'm paying the bills and I'm being able to do the things I want to be able to do, more money is not going to make me any happier. And a higher division job I don't know that that necessarily makes me happier either. I think there's a lot of pros to being at the Division II level, meaning, one of those things is we kind of have our summers where we can't practice with our teams. It's not legal, and so we get a little more time than some of those Division I coaches do. In that respect, we get a little more time at Christmas. So just all those family things. I think I could see myself being here forever and not chasing another level.
Before we wrap up, we've seen women's basketball really evolve since the first pick of the Indiana Fever with their number one choice. And we've seen arenas packed like crazy with her being the first uh pick in the draft. What's your take on the evolution of women basketball? Because you are a coach in this. You like to see them go from the collegiate ranks to the women's league. But what's your take on one woman who's clearly amplified the trajectory of the league right now?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely awesome. I think, yeah, especially for my players, but my daughter as well. I'd like for her to see successful women,
Mhm.
and to know that she and again, all my players are going to have those opportunities if they put the work in. I think just having opportunities is big for me. So I every single assistant coach I have ever had has been a minority hire, and that's kind of a focus for me. I want to give opportunities for some of those that haven't had those opportunities. And so, again, what Caitlin Clark is doing and Angel Reese is doing, I think it's great. I think it shows little girls out there that they're going to have opportunities, and I think that's important for them to see.
Before we end this, we got to give shots out to your wife. How'd you
No
guys
doubt.
meet? How'd you guys meet? Tell me a little about that Cinderella story. That's really.
Yeah, so it's one of those. She was a cheerleader for the college basketball team I played for, and so that's how we met back in college at Black Hills State. And man, I couldn't have asked for a better partner. Traveling kind of all over the country to different coaching spots, and her kind of allowing me to be able to do that. Taking care of the bills and taking care of the kids and taking care of really everything. You can't be a successful college basketball coach without a great spouse, and so I'm very thankful to have her by my side. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. I know that.
You definitely have that beast mindset, and I love it. And I appreciate you taking time to come on the show and share such a beautiful and courageous story of giving up time to pursue making a difference in everybody else's life. What keeps that beast mindset going for you? Let the viewers, what keeps you going every day?
Well, you only have a limited time here on Earth, and so I want to be successful. We talk a lot with our teams about there's a lot of average in the world and not adding to it. I don't want to add to average in the world. I want to. There's a select amount of people that are above average, whether that's what they do as far as work, or whether what they make as far as money, whatever. Pick any category you want. I don't want to add to average. I want to be successful. And so, again, I have a limited time here. I want to be as good as I can possibly be at everything I do. And so that's what keeps me motivated. And I also want to be able to share that with the young women in our basketball program. I want to share that with my own kids. I want them to be successful. I don't want them to add to average. And if I can help in a tiny way, I think that's a big reason why I coach is to empower those young women to be successful and help make our world a little better.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Nick Fall on another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.